Welcome to another episode of the Shift with Elena Agar podcast. In this episode, we shift into the transformative journey of Jevon Wooden, former military service member turned speaker, coach, and consultant. In this discussion, Jevon shares insights on resilience, leadership, and the power of mindset in navigating both life challenges and entrepreneurial endeavors. From emphasizing the importance of empathetic leadership to the impact AI on human work, Jevon offers a wealth of wisdom and practical advice for my listeners on this thought-provoking episode. Tune in and listen to us as we explore the intersections of leadership, personal growth, and the importance of integrating mindfulness and nature into our daily lives. Enjoy it and let me know what you think. All right, Jevon, welcome to the Shift podcast.
Man, thank you so much for having me, Elena. I'm excited to talk about the shift.
Yeah, you've had a few shifts in your life. I'm excited for the audience to share that. So let's dive in. Tell me, how do you go from, being in a military service to becoming a speaker, coach, and consultant and just doing the really cool things you're doing today?
I have had quite a few shifts, and I feel like it's an ongoing thing, right? The only thing constant in life is change. But for me, really, the shift from the military side to what I do now, it was an amalgamation of things. Like the military taught me a lot of skills over my career, and it really reinforced the confidence to just go for it. One of the common sayings in the army is to stay flexible because we understand that we don't control the outcomes, so we only control the effort that we can put in. So with that, I was on my last deployment in 2017 to Afghanistan, and my body was breaking down, and I knew I just could not do it much more being in the military. I was on the civilian side by that time as a reservist, and I was in tech, cybersecurity. I was like, "Oh, this is cool. It pays the bill, but it does not feed my soul. So what can I do?" At that point, I knew my purpose was to serve others and help them find their purpose and to achieve and unlock their potential. So I started Googling. I started Googling. Google can help us find a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
including our next
Facts.
stop, right? So I started Googling, like, what can you do besides motivational speaking to help other people? And coaching was on that list. And I was like, okay, what is this, right? This, because I automatically thought of a sports coach. It's exactly the opposite, right? We do not have to have all the answers. We help people find the answers. So that's when I knew that that was the thing that I was going to do. So I just started building up my company while I was still working. That's important. While I still had a
Mm-hmm.
job for as long as I could, so that I can, make sure I establish a solid foundation, and I can still support my family during this journey.
I love that. You mentioned an interesting point about just the power of kind of just helping people figure their stuff out. And I think that's the misconception about coaching. And the power of having a soundboard is so essential. Like, I don't know about you,
Hmm.
but I've had coaches throughout my whole life. I still have coaches. I spent a lot of money on
Absolutely.
coaches. Even though, like, yeah, I get it. Like, I could probably coach myself. It's not the same. Like, it's not, and you don't want to talk to friends because they're usually biased, or there's a number of complication when it comes to talking about career or business goals with friends, right? Or family
Right.
members. So I think that, there's just so much power in just having a soundboard and a safe space to be like,
Absolutely. And that accountability, the
yeah.
accountability, and then being able to get questioned about the way you are looking at things or the lack of perspective, right, in an idea. And I think that's where the real true power of having a coach really comes from. It's those questions that you may not think of it that way, that may not be your perspective, challenging your belief system, all these things that it's really hard to do otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is, in a world where, especially it seems like after the pandemic, so many people have discovered the art of coaching. You mentioned an important part about you were building that out while you were still working. And I think today you have so many people that are just kind of jumping into whatever entrepreneurship journey they're doing without actually like picking that up. Because I was doing the same thing. I think I was doing like for 2-3 years side hustles before I started my first business in 2019, and now I'm back in a corporate world and starting a side business now. And I'm like, I don't know when I'm ready to jump. And I think that's important because it's become so trendy, and I think understanding the roller coaster of entrepreneurial journey is essential, especially for the young people maybe listening to this and like thinking maybe I should just jump ship and do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, like, when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, don't just jump, right? I know that's the cool thing. The gurus tell you, cut your job off, all that stuff. I don't believe that. I believe to hold on as long as you can, because to have that uncertain income is a very stressful situation. So build it as you go, right? You don't have to do everything. Find out the prioritize your things, like see what the minimum viable product you need, find out the information you need while you're still working so it can fund your dream. That's what I did. And I feel like entrepreneurship, you can test the waters a little bit, right? The
Mm-hmm.
the 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 beauty about being an entrepreneur is you may start off with one idea and then you may end up somewhere completely different than what you thought would be the thing that you were serving your audience with. So really take that time to explore, try a couple of different things, different services, different products, right? Different marketing techniques. Do your research during that time and then go ahead and take that leap.
Yeah. And I'm sure also for you, having been in the military and having faced so much unknown and uncertainty, and there's probably also just a lot of change and adapting, even just having to be in another country, right? Just adapting to change, I would imagine helps quite a bit in your own not only entrepreneurship journey, but also as you coach leaders.
Absolutely. I mean, adapting to change, that's is probably one of the best skills I learned in the military. As I said at the beginning, is the only thing constant is change. So we have to understand, especially if you're taking that entrepreneurial journey or doing a career change, that we don't control the outcomes, right? There's going to be some adversity in the journey, no matter what. So the one thing that we can do is focus on how can we use our mindset to ensure that that adversity does not completely derail us, right?
Mm.
Identify the lessons that you can learn as that change is transpiring, as those outcomes that you would like to happen, you aspire to happen are being challenged, and then apply that so you can be better, right? Your shirt says 1% better each day. That's really all we can ask for ourselves, is to be 1% better every day.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to remember because and yeah, I'll blame social media personally for this, but there's so many success stories out there that are in your face, but not as many of failure or of failure before you hit the success. It's always like, and then there's this misconception that things are easy and supposed to be quick and etc. And one of the things that you have mentioned in the beginning was about effort, like the amount of effort that it takes, like for you to be successful in the military, for example. Like there's a lot of hard work and effort and certain character traits that I truly believe not everybody has, and not everybody can develop. That's a personal opinion, but I think that there's certain level of adversity that one has to face, the earlier the better, that will prepare them. Like if you did not face adversity
Yes,
like by the time you graduate from college, let me stop you if you decide you want to be an entrepreneur. Not because I don't think you can, I just think you need to, there's certain things you need to recognize and realize, like self-awareness pieces, right? Before you jump ship, because it's a
absolutely.
adversity is, I admire people who've gone through adversity earlier in life, hopefully not too bad, but I think that's what military also offers. And just
Absolutely.
thought your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that adversity, they say adversity builds character. We hear that. But more than that, it's about the resilience that you obtain over that time. And sorry for this garbage can truck. But
Yeah.
it's about the resilience that you really build. There's a muscle, right? Just like anything else, the adversity you face helps you to understand that that is not the end all be all, right? It is a point in time. And I feel like if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to understand that, because when that money is going up and down, right, in that journey, when you're not making any money, when you open a product or a service and it falls on crickets, right, you have to be able to shift and say, all right, what did I learn from that I can apply moving forward? If you do not have the resilience and the mindset to do that, because the entrepreneurial mindset is completely different from what we're used to, right? We don't have anyone paying us a check regardless of our performance, right? We don't have anyone putting food on the table just because you are an employee at that organization. So we have to be mindful of that and conscious of that it is a constant work, right? It is, as I said, the effort that you put in as an entrepreneur is constant. There is no 9 to 5 entrepreneur, right? So we have to understand that. And of course, there is a beauty in that, there's untapped income, right? Potential. You can kind of make your own schedule and work when you need, so to speak, once you start getting into the groove of those things. But the military teaches you all of that if you're open to the lessons, right? It
Yeah.
depends on the person if you're open to the lessons, and that's one of the lessons that I applied went day in and day out in my own life, and then also when I'm coaching others. Because when you talk about even in a career shift, that uncertainty is what really gets people, not knowing what's next. That is the scariest feeling that a lot of us have to go through when we're talking about shifts in life and significant life change. So
Mm.
yeah, I would say the best way to build resilience if you hadn't been through anything previously that was challenging, challenge yourself. Right, put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, and you don't have to have this big grand step. Right, start small and then start building that muscle day in and day out.
Yeah. It's every time somebody says challenge myself, I always laugh because my partner always tries to challenge me in like fitness, like physical stuff, and I
Uh
said, you
huh.
know what, I'm challenged enough in my day to day in my work. I was like, I do not need to sprint this well, like, and
I
this, and
love
I
it.
laugh every time. So because we always have this, because he's like a fitness guy, and I'm like, I was like, my mind is challenged on a daily basis. I was like, I don't have so many challenges in my head, so every time, like, and I'm like, but maybe I should challenge myself more in the fitness arena. I don't know, but anyway,
I
it's a
love that.
sensitive, it's a trigger for me these days when people like challenge, because he tells me all the time. I was like, leave me alone. I don't want to. I don't. I'm doing the best that
Yeah,
I can.
and fitness is a great metaphor for life, right? Because
Yeah.
if you think about that, to get stronger, you have to put yourself under stress. So it's just that constant reminder, like, let me try to get a PR, a personal record in this squat or deadlift, or let me try to run a little faster. That's life, right? We
Yeah.
try to be a little bit better, and sometimes we fail. But are you going to try again later, or are you going to let that scare you from even attempting again, right? So that's the question we constantly have to ask ourselves.
Yeah. I'm curious, in the clients that you work with, especially like the senior leaders and executives, what are some things they worry about? Like, what are the challenges they're experiencing?
Oh, I mean, they have a lot because not only are they, have to take care of self, but they have to take care of other people, right? So their decisions resonate and cause a domino effect. So they're worried about making that right choice for the greater good of the people. Contrary to popular belief, I know we hear a lot about layoffs and all these other things. There's still a human making that decision, and there's humans behind the decisions, right? That are impacted. So they're constantly worried about that. How can I make the best decision to ensure that I can keep these people employed, that I can bring on new talent, that people do want to work for this organization.
Mm.
And then how do I move it forward where, we're still very profitable? And if you have stakeholders, not every company is public, but for those public organizations, they have to say, how can I make sure the shareholders and all the stakeholders are happy enough where they will continue to be invested in what we have going on?
Mm. And I think it's also one of those things that there's a lot of media attention around layoffs, but to your point, that those decisions are not made lightly, and it's
Right.
just, and business is business, and at the end of the day, and you got to do what's best for the business. Sometimes, and it's not always fair, but neither is life. And I think
Right.
it's important to, that's where kind of the empathetic leadership comes in, right? But it's like, you can be empathetic all you want. I guess that's the best that you can do, but at the end of the day, you have to make a business call.
Hmm.
How do you work with these leaders? Are they, like, a lot of people that you work with? I'm curious. I'm sure because they're already coming to you, so they're already open to coaching. But I would imagine that a lot of leaders are a little bit like, I don't need advice, or maybe they, on the
Right.
contrary, they're like, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need some help as well, type thing. Like, what do you see in that interaction?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're so a lot of the leaders, they need someone or they want someone where they can kind of get that advice or at least have that sounding board like we were saying, because at that level it's really hard to find someone else that you can ask those questions to and kind of find that, because everyone's situation is different and they all feel like they're in a unique situation, although a lot of their issues are, very similar. So what I have found is, for instance, if there's a layoff impending, one of the things they're asking is, how do I go about this the right way? And you mentioned empathetic leadership. And one of the things I always say, empathy is one, not about being just mushy and being, happy go lucky all the time. But one of the key components of being empathetic is transparency, right? Being honest about it. Like, as soon as I find out as a leader, I'm going to tell my people that this is something that we may have to do so they can start preparing themselves. I'm going to make sure that they get a severance package. I'm going to make sure that we bring in a company that can help them review their resumes and help them get placed in a new location or new company, right? So that's some of the things that we work through. Like, how do I best show empathy in such a tumultuous time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of them are worried to, even if they've been through it before. They say,
Mm.
I've learned lessons and there were certain things that I just didn't feel I did correctly. So help me to kind of better prepare. Help me make sure that my staff is prepared, the HR team is prepared, right? So those are some of the things that they will go through. And then when it comes to them feeling like they know everything, I always challenge them, right? Some because those are two different types of people, right? Those that feel like they already know it, I always ask them, okay, you came here for a reason. What was it? Right?
Mm.
So if you feel like you already have the answer, what was the key reason? What brought you here? And sometimes you ask why, right? That's kind of where my 5 why framework came from. Is the whole why 5 times exercise, right? Usually around the third time we get off that surface level reason and we start getting those root causes, the emotional pieces. So those are some of the things that that I find is a trend with most of my clients.
Yeah, the 5 why exercise is really, really good. It actually
Yes.
reminds me, maybe I should do it for some of the things I'm thinking about. But it's I'm curious your thoughts on this because I feel like in a world where we're so on the go all the time, we almost don't stop and pause to get to that root cause, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in career development, personal growth, whatever it may be. In your opinion, like with the people that you work with, are they, is everybody as overwhelmed as I am sometimes? I'm just curious. And like some of the people I talk to, like, are we all just super distracted, or is it really the ability to like take a moment? And do leaders have it figured out better than other people? I don't know.
No, they do not. I think that is a constant thing. Even for us, those of us who practice it constantly, right? That whole mindfulness practice, and I think that's why they call it a practice because you can never get it perfect, right?
Mm,
So being mindful is something you have to consciously bring to the forefront of your mind because it's not something that happens subconsciously. You have to make sure you pause and slow down. And one of the things that I always help the leaders to understand that I coach is, if you take a moment to really analyze and process what's going on, clarity takes place. Because when you're kind of responding instead of, if you're just reacting to things, being reactive doesn't allow you to kind of take a moment to see the whole picture. So they
mm,
see power in that. They see power in saying, "Hold on, let's take a moment, like, take a break, take a breather, and really, really take some time to look at this." Because a lot of them have made those knee jerk reactions and decisions, and it didn't turn out well. So I like to look at Steve Jobs in this time, right? I
mm.
always remind them, like, hey, Steve Jobs, on some of his most important meetings, what he did was he would take them walking so that he
Yeah, I
could be
love that.
present in the moment versus sitting in an environment that kind of felt closed in, and it felt like it was closing his mind off and his heart and his emotions and kind of was weighing on him. So it's like if you're sitting in a cubicle and you see these 4 walls, you feel kind of imprisoned mentally and emotionally too. So you want to make sure that you're in a space that helps you to feel kind of free and open. And then when you start to feel that weight, you understand that you're not trapped, right? You can take a pause. You can tell whoever you're speaking with, like, hey, let's take a moment, right? Let's slow it down. And that's okay to say. Oftentimes we set these artificial boundaries on the boundaries we can set, when we have
Mm,
to understand that that's not the case. You have to make sure that to make the best decisions, whatever that may be, that you convey what you're feeling to other people. And for me, that is the hardest part of being empathetic, is to say, in the middle of a meeting, hold on. I know you all want this to happen, but I'm feeling this, right? What are your thoughts? Right. And I know a lot of leaders, they say those people that challenge their thoughts, those are the ones that really help them most, instead of everyone just saying, okay, let's move on. Right. So They feel it too, right? It's a
Yeah.
human emotion and human situation to feel that overwhelm, right? We just have to really find out what works for us to combat that.
Hmm. I love the Steve Jobs walking meetings, by the way. I recently listened to a
Yes.
podcast. I forget the lady's name. She's a psychologist, and she was saying there's a reason why, when we go on long drives and you're sitting kind of looking ahead, like, you drive in the past, you're looking ahead, and you are, a lot of deep conversations take place because we're not looking at each other. And same thing with walks. A lot more transparency comes out, a lot more kind of real
Mm,
feelings and emotions come out as we're walking, not only for the creativity pieces, but also because usually walking side by side. And so we're kind of looking forward. So it almost creates a different space versus sitting and looking
right.
across from each other. It's hard to be vulnerable. And I thought that was a good point because I was like, a lot of really deep conversations happen on road trips. If you think about it, like, there's always something to talk about. Like, obviously, if you're in good company, if the person knows how to conversate,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do believe there's something to walking meetings where when it makes sense and just being outside. And I think creativity is one skill that we need to continue to hone in on as professionals and as leaders, and being outdoors, being a fan of outdoors and understanding the impact of it. It's so essential. I mean, even before we start recording, you're like, I'm going to get some of the sunshine, right?
Absolutely.
Like, stay
Absolutely.
outside. Feel like I should be outside right now. I'm going to go after this recording, though.
Come on, you got to
Maybe
do it. You got to
I'm
do it. I
going right
mean,
after we're done with this. Yeah.
I
But,
think to your point, Elena, that point of, looking forward and, being outside, I really feel like the open space, right?
mm,
Again, I really feel like that triggers something for us because, we humans are still it's still relatively new for us to constantly be confined to an indoor space, right? If you think about our ancestors and everything, they were out on the plains, right? Hunting and gathering and doing all these other things. Now we become so used to being confined in a space that kind of stifles the creativity, and stifles the natural processes that go on in our biological bodies, right, in our situation.
mm-hmm,
So I think that it's really, really important for us to kind of make it a point to take a walk, to get some energy from the sun, to talk to your partner walking side by side. Those are great exercises, and you can do it in a business situation as well, right?
mm,
A lot of us are working remotely, and we're so used to staring at a screen, and oftentimes the person isn't even on the screen, right? So
yeah.
what if right?
It's an
So what if you
avatar.
could exactly, exactly. It's just a picture of that person that you see every day. So what if, we make it a point as leaders to say, you know what? I know we're constantly doing these remote meetings and a lot of times you're confined to a desk and you have a lot of distractions going on. You got your kids screaming, you got your spouse, trying to ask you a question, whatever the case may be. I want you to take, this meeting, at least one meeting a week from somewhere else that makes you feel like you're away, that you're on a vacation somewhere, right? So that could be at a park somewhere, whatever. We're not worried about the noise and all that stuff that's taking place. We're more focused on your mental well-being, right? What if leaders did that? What if leaders gave you the license to just take that meeting from wherever instead of feeling like we're confined? Because that's one of the benefits of working remotely, but
Mm-hmm.
hardly no one takes advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, oh God, there's so much I can say about that, but I'm gonna keep quiet in terms. But I think that's just it's a whole other topic of like trust in organizations and effective
Yep, yep,
leaders and so on, and understanding of human performance from a psychological and a physiological perspective. So I'll
absolutely.
save it for another episode. My audience is probably tired of me mentioning these things because I'm obsessed. But a quick statistics I want to share. Recently, again, I was listening to a podcast. Naturally, I'm a huge fan of podcasts, and I forget the first name, but Brecka, his last name is Brecka. I forget his name, Greg Brecka. I forget his last name. I apologize. But he said that as human beings, we're meant to be outside more than 75%. I forget the exact number, but it's like more than 75% of our time because of our
Mm,
ancestors. And so, like, that's just how we're designed. Yet today, we spend 91% of our time indoors, and that is just so unhealthy. And and again, I'll save the health discussion for another conversation, but there's something to it. And I think we forget that,
absolutely.
we forget that we're human and we need that. But
Absolutely. And sitting, we're probably sedentary when we're indoors, right? Which is
don't even get me
another
started.
issue.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not just the health standpoint, right? But it's also, like we said, the getting your mental, getting that creativity, getting that feeling of wanting to try things, the innovative spirit, all these things that come along with being confined. So
Yeah.
we really have to. I just want the audience to just test it out. See how you feel, if you can be outside. See how you feel working outside versus being indoors, right? Or change your work environment. If you constantly work in your office, change where you're at, right? Go to a co-working space if you want. Do something different so that you can kind of compare and contrast the two.
Yeah. Speaking of humans and our, all the cool things that we're creating, including AI, what are some of your thoughts? Like, how do you keep up with the trends in tech? Are you worried? Like, I talk to my, fellow coaches, and I'm like, are you worried about AI, and all the, you know, power it has in terms of like replacing some of the things that we might offer? Just curious your thoughts.
No, I'm my background is tech and I love AI. I don't look at it as something that will replace us. I look at something that will augment, right? So I use it a lot in my business. I feel like it's a force multiplier. And
Mm,
I also feel like it helps me to really challenge my own ideas, right? It's like my own coach, right? So I'll go and
yeah.
say, hey, how does this new article on empathetic leadership sound? They say, hey, it's trash. Here's how you can make it better, right? So I like that component of it. I feel like what we need to do as people when we think about AI and all these things is like, what are some of the skills? If we look forward thinking, if we become forward thinking, what are some of the skills that I can help myself, right, be prepared for whatever is to come? Because the thing about AI is it can't be emotional, right? It's not empathetic, and there's a lot of things it can't do the human things that humans do, right? All it can do is the language and context and content, right? So we have to understand that it is not smart. So
Yeah.
as humans, how can we leverage that to really help us in our daily tasks? What are some of the things we can see? For instance, HR, right? I was at an HR conference last week sometime, and AI was a huge topic. Oh, it's going to replace HR folks. No, and a lot of the experts were like, no, it's not going to replace. It's just going to help us do our jobs more efficiently. For instance, instead of the biased opinions that we have about people because they're in our proximity, maybe there's a coworker who's more of an introvert who's not comfortable being at the forefront, who's not always talking on meetings, but maybe they're a better fit for the promotion. That AI can go ahead and review performance metrics, projects they worked on, et cetera, and say, no, this is the diamond in the rough that you're not looking at, right? So things like that is how we have to start thinking about AI, right? It augments versus replaces.
Mm. Yeah, I tend to have the similar outlook. I'm optimistic in general about AI. I love it. It's saving me so much time, honestly, and money
Yes.
ultimately, in so many ways. So I love it. I'm excited about it. I just like I feel like I can't keep up. Like I don't know what I should focus on to learn. Like that's my biggest. I'm like, I just don't have the. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I'm trying to be like more balanced these days versus 14-hour
Right.
days that I've been doing for the last I don't know how many years. So anyway, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but it's definitely it's something to be excited about, I think.
Yeah, and I would say like when it's so much like for high achievers you want to know everything, but I always say like tie what you learn and the information you're ingesting to your greater goals, right?
Hmm.
So who am I looking to be? What position would I aspire to be in? 3 years down the road, and does me spending months on end learning how to code really align with that, right? So those are some of the things that go through my head because I'm like you, I want to know everything,
Mm,
especially when new tech comes out. So I just say, it doesn't benefit me to learn like the inner workings of AI. All I need to learn is prompt engineering, right? So I can make sure I'm getting out outputs that I need. So that's how I kind of go about it. Like, does it align with my top three goals that I have for my life?
I love that. And what are some things you're excited about for the next 6 months or throughout this year, maybe early next year? What are some things that are on the books for you and excited about?
Absolutely. So for me, I am really, really invested in, building cultivating those empathetic cultures and organizations. So I'm taking that and I'm tackling it in a few different modes. So I'm coming up and creating some courses that leaders can go ahead and implement. that are self-paced, and then I'll augment that with our new consulting package that we've created, that's tailored to the situation of that organization. We've done a lot of one-on-one coaching as of late, but I realized that to really maximize the impact, there has to be it's kind of one-to-many offerings, and that and also asynchronous offerings. So we're really diving deep into that course type of arena.
Nice. And before I ask you my last question, where can people get in touch with you? Where do you hang out at the most?
LinkedIn is my number one. As we
Yeah.
connected via LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message, Jevon Wooden, and then you'll see a light bulb next to my name. Yeah, I would love to hear from you. Or you can go to my website, jevonwooden.com. Shoot me a message through there.
Sounds good. And I'll make sure to include all that in the show notes. And last question I ask all of my guests. What is one question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
Oh, that is a good question, by the way.
Thank
I
you.
wish I could say that that's the question I wanted to ask now because it was so good. But the one question I wish people would ask more of is instead of saying why, or what if in a negative way, I want them to ask, what if it works? I wish people would go into the positive framing, the optimistic view a lot more often because they will find a lot more clarity and a lot more confidence. And chances are they'll find a few answers if they did that.
Love it. Well, Javon, thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected. I know we have lots of different collaborations coming up, and I'm very excited for it. And just look forward to the programs that you're going to be launching and taking advantage of those myself as well. So, thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again, Elena, and everything you are doing as well. You are awesome.